Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am very pleased to have as my guest, Duncan Bhaskaran Brown, pronouncing it correctly. And today, let me tell you a little bit about him. So some people say that Duncan can help you go beyond alcohol, but that isn't it. Duncan will help you increase your energy, power, up your productivity, improve your relationships, and enjoy a heck of a good life. After 20 years of overdoing it, he cleaned up his act and trained with the world's most successful stop smoking service. But that wasn't enough. He studied at Cornell University, the Chartered Management Institute, and in a windowless room in Peterborough. But that wasn't enough. He wrote a couple of books, most recently, Real Men Quit, The Armchair Macho Guide to Beating Booze and Finding the Life You Want. But that wasn't enough. He started interviewing the sober superstars and conducting research projects, which involved watching TV. But that wasn't enough. What would be enough? Maybe if alcohol-free was the default, if sober was the normal, and if alcohol stops destroying people, maybe then Duncan will sit down with a mint tea and a sci-fi novel and relax. Maybe. So let's talk today about why alcohol is a business problem. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Duncan Bhaskaran Brown. Duncan.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to having a bit of a chat.
Yeah, my first exposure to how alcohol can be a problem in business was my very first career. I worked for an accounting firm, and it was not the top accounting firm, but it was up and coming and had potential. And the managing partner had a problem. And it was interesting because he controlled it pretty well and people protected him pretty well. And I was the front desk person. So I had to learn quickly how to hide where there was a problem. And probably, that wasn't for the best for anyone. But it was interesting what I saw, knowing the issue. I saw the young accountants that were trying to become partners, trying to become somebody. And they were using him as an example and changing their beers to scotch and just, having after dinner business meetings that became calling someone to drive them home. And so it really seemed to be an issue. And then the next company that I went with, the leader of that company also had that issue. And now as an entrepreneur, one of the ways that a lot of us do business is in the bar. Well, as a woman doing business in the bar, does not always mean we're doing business that you want. And so it's really kind of challenging in that world that we live in. It's like, well, if I meet you after work or in a bar to talk business, it is to talk business. And it doesn't necessarily need to be more than, I love a glass of wine and a cocktail, but I don't ever take it to those extremes. And I don't think you need to. And so I was very happy to be able to bring you on to talk about this, to make more awareness of it. So before we get into all this deepness that I've just laid upon everyone, we always start with that easy question. Just tell everybody, where do you live? Where do you call home?
So I live near Oxford in England. At a nice little place. I live there with one beautiful wife, one beautiful daughter, and two fairly average-looking bonsai trees.
A bonsai tree, that takes work. That's so you had shared in your bio a little bit about the journey, but I'd love to always share, what was your journey like that took you from drinking and smoking and eating junk food, that there's all kinds of addictions that we can have, to be energy and focused and peace and happiness be now the direction that you wanted your path to go?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and as I will probably have to mention, I used to be quite involved in politics, which therefore means none of the listeners will be too surprised when I answer a completely different question. So I was quite successful, and I think what you were talking about right at the start, it goes to something that we need to challenge about alcohol. A lot of people, their idea of drinking problems involve people who aren't successful. In fact, they're the opposite of successful. They lose their home, they lose their family, they lose their car. But most of the people that drink excessively actually earn very good money and hold down decent jobs. And like me, on the outside, it all looked good. And if you'd asked, I would have told you it was amazing because I talk a good game. And on the outside, I was very, very successful. But, inside, I was miserable, and I knew that something needed to change. And I meet an awful lot of people like that. Most of the clients that I have are successful, they're professionals, they're CEOs, they're leaders. They're the kind of people that you look at and go, wow, they're really nailing life. And, part of their life they are. But and it's a fairly big but so I just wanted to kind of get across the idea that actually, alcohol, it's often a problem of success more than anything else. So me, I was kind of like bumbling along. I was doing pretty well, ostensibly, but like I say, I was miserable, and something needed to change. It reached a head with my wife and I. We were trying to start a family, which was, it's quite good fun. And she got pregnant, and it was all going very well. And we were, like the typical stupid, overly optimistic young parents. And then she had a miscarriage, and it all really fell apart. And I think the worst thing about my drinking was, at that moment when she needed me the most, I wasn't there for her. And my standard reaction to stress was, drink some more. So I just disappeared into a bottle, and I totally and utterly failed to support her. But it brought everything to a head. And I never phrased it in such a clear-cut way. But now I look back on that period of my life, and I realize I was basically asking myself a question, do I want to have a family, or do I want to have another drink? The good news is I made the right decision, and almost 9 months to the day after I stopped drinking, our daughter was born, which was fantastic. Actually, gave me a whole new set of problems. But as soon as I stopped drinking, it was pretty immediate and pretty quick, that sense of energy and focus and joy and peace. And like literally day by day after I stopped drinking, my life got better. And that's why I went on to try and share that with people.
And I think one of the things that alcohol tends to do is put a haze on everything, and really you're missing all of those moments and those wonderful things when you're living life through that haze.
Yeah, I mean, partly you miss them because you're in the bar all of the time, and generally the wonderful moments in life do not happen in the pub. But there's, a fairly subtle kind of neurobiological reason for why life just becomes a bit grey when you drink. So what happens when you drink alcohol is, it releases a lot of neurotransmitters, and that's why initially when we have that first drink, we feel more relaxed, we feel a bit happier, we feel like our stress has been lifted. Of course, that is an illusion, and as those chemicals go up, your brain doesn't really like that kind of imbalance, so it compensates and makes them go down again, which is why when you wake up the next morning, even if you've only had a couple of drinks and you don't have a hangover, you still feel, that little bit more anxious, that little bit, your mood is a bit lower, you just don't feel quite like yourself, literally just after a couple of drinks. So that's, what happens if you drink once, which is all fine and dandy and everything gets back to normal, doesn't it? But if you drink repeatedly, then what happens is your brain starts to wise up to this up and down cycle, which it doesn't like. It wants the balance. So it actually stops you releasing these huge amounts of neurotransmitters. And that's helpful when you're drinking alcohol. But, all of those neurotransmitters are what you use to basically enjoy life. So because your brain is attempting to protect itself, when the things in life that normally release those neurotransmitters happen, like, watching a decent film, seeing your kids run around the park, having a hug, whatever you get joy and pleasure from in life, because your brain is kind of down regulating all of these neurotransmitters, you just don't enjoy it as much. So do it for long enough and everything just becomes bland and grey and absolutely the same.
Yeah. So let's just talk about back to talking about business, and so what should businesses do to ensure that alcohol is not draining their employees' productivity?
So, I mean, I think that with everything, you've just got to get started. And most businesses have now got started because they've kind of figured out that well-being is quite a useful thing. And yeah, a lot of them do it from a moral point of view because they genuinely want their employees to be happy and healthy. But they've also figured out that happy, healthy employees, they do more work, they do better work, they do more creative work, but they also stay for longer. They don't leave, and the cost of recruitment is, very, very heavy. And of course, if you've got this good culture where everybody's happy and enjoying themselves, then the top talent is, going to come to your company. So there's this big kind of like obvious bottom line benefit to well-being that most companies have wised up to. The problem is they've started the conversation, but they haven't really gone far enough. Most well-being programs just don't address alcohol because in our society, we don't really like to talk about alcohol. I mean, we do, don't we? We like to talk about how much we drink it. We like to send funny birthday cards wishing you a happy birthday. Hope you get drunk and fall down, which, if you think about it, is a weird thing to wish somebody birthday. We like to spread the memes on social media, but we don't actually like to talk about the effects and the risks of alcohol. So what we want to do is, just start the conversation, just bring about that kind of awareness, whether that's through educational sessions, whether that's through alcohol-free events, whether it's through, diagnostic and some coaching interventions and things like that. It's just actually getting companies to begin to think about it and so to realize that, encouraging your staff to drink is like encouraging them to not work as hard.
Yeah. And I know that the last company that I retired from, they had, a hotline that you could call if you had drug, alcohol, or whatever kind of issues, and sort of like pushed it off there. But, for me as that frontline manager of my team, a part of me building a relationship with them is to understand and be able to have those conversations with them, understanding that, I'm not the experts, but still maybe kind of giving them a sounding board to maybe not reach for the bottle, but if they had issues or something that they just needed someone to talk to listen.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, employee assistance programs are great, and most of them will have some form of drug or alcohol counseling, and that's fantastic, and it does help people. It does help people get the help when they really, really need it, when they get all the way over to the kind of drinking that is going to risk their job and their family and their car. But that's like saying, well, play it fast and loose, because we've got a fire department. Just like flick matches wherever you want, because if you set fire to the building, the fire service will just come along and put it out. What we need is much more. We need more smoke alarms, and we need more of a community fire safety message. We need to start to help people before they get into trouble, because nobody just suddenly becomes a problem drinker. Everybody starts out drinking at a relatively social level, and it creeps up and it creeps up and it creeps up, and then occasionally you'll get a big kind of like traumatic event, like a car accident, or a death in the family, or a divorce, or something like that. I think it's just the natural stuff that happens to people, but is quite difficult, and that can push the drinking up into that problem area. So we need to sort of start to get to people when they're going outside of this low risk area into the kind of medium and severe risk before they get to the really heavy problem drinking areas.
Yeah, I know. In my family, I had a sister-in-law, now ex-sister-in-law, sadly, who had done gastric bypass, and it was really weird how timing works in life. But I had watched a Dr. Oz show, and he was having all these soccer moms come on and talk about how they after having this gastric bypass surgery, they didn't realize how alcohol was a no-no anymore. And I thought of my sister-in-law, and I called her right away, and I said, "You're not drinking anymore," because she was a big time social drinker, always, always the life of the party kind of. And she says, "Oh, no, I'm not." And then, as you say, she was taking an occasional drink that I found later, but her mom died. And she and her mom were so close. And that just took her over the edge to the point where she was driving her kids to school drunk. And it just got to the point where it just ruined the marriage. And my brother ended up getting the kids. And her life has never really gotten back on track. And it's just, you just think, well, if I could have said something early on, that she never would have got that way, to that point. And I think awareness, that's why I wanted to do this. I think awareness of the power of alcohol needs to be, and again, I drink. I'm not saying not to drink, but how much are you drinking?
Yeah, and likewise, I don't drink. I don't think it would work out too well for me. So for me, the right thing is not to drink. But I absolutely recognise that there is quite a significant amount of people that drink at this low risk level, and what we want is for everybody to make the choice. And if they want to drink, drink at the low risk level, and if they don't want to drink, then don't drink. And we're all about supporting people who do that and helping them get there before it is too late. And that's one of the things that comes across all of the time to me. I tell people what I do an awful lot. I like to talk. I don't know whether that comes across. And so much of the time I get stories just like the one you've just told me. Everybody knows somebody whose life has been seriously impacted by alcohol. And I do feel for your sister-in-law, because the gastric bypass surgery, the statistics after that are quite grim when it comes to alcohol. There's sort of two things at play with that. One is if you're using food as a coping mechanism, and then that is taken away from you. What you will tend to do is go and find another coping mechanism. You got so gastric band surgery can work very well if it works hand in hand with understanding the psychology of it rather than just the medical aspect of it. And it goes into the sort of like, what are you trying to cope with and why are you using it as a coping mechanism? Of course, if you don't do that psychological piece, you end up just finding another coping mechanism, and alcohol is readily available, as I'm sure you're aware. But then on top of that, alcohol is digested through your stomach. So what gastric surgery tends to do is increase the impact that alcohol has on you. So it gets you drunker quicker.
Yeah. So I know when I go to my annual physical, they always ask you, well, how many glasses do you drink a week and whatnot? And so what does the World Health Organization recommend for checking annually our alcohol use?
Yeah, so the World Health Organization has created some diagnostic screening tools that really should be used on an awful lot more people than they are. The sad truth is that most healthcare systems around the world would love to be doing this annual screening and doing it properly, but most of them either lack the resources or they lack qualified staff, or there's occasionally other political things that get in the way of it, but it's not happening often enough. And there are a lot of different groups that the World Health Organization identified, but one of the ones that I think is so key is business executives. So they consider business executives to be high risk for alcohol problems, and therefore they should be screened every year. Now, if you happen to have top-notch medical care, then great, they probably are going to be doing that, but for most people that is not the reality. So that's one of the things that we always suggest that companies do. Actually, if the world is not providing you with what you need, you just go out and find a way of doing it yourself. And it's pretty cheap, it's pretty inexpensive, and it's pretty quick as well. It's the way we do it, it's 12 questions. And then there are certain interventions based on that follow up from that. If you're drinking at the low risk, area, then we just tell you how wonderful you are and encourage you to stay doing that. Of course, if you've crept into the medium risk area, then, we can spend 15 minutes just helping you to really understand what low risk looks like, and then giving you a few great ways of getting it back down into that low risk area. And the really good news, the thing that I always want to share with people, is that actually low risk drinking is more pleasurable. Because one of the best ways of getting your drinking down into that low risk is just becoming more aware of it, being more mindful about your drinking, and not just saying, well, the football's on, so I'll have a drink. It's Friday night, I'll have a drink. I'm with my friends, I'll have a drink. There's so many occasions where we just drink and we're not even really aware of it. And if you're not even aware of it, then you're definitely not enjoying it. So we're all about getting to that point where you're using it very much because it's a special occasion, and you're making that occasion more special, and you're savoring what you're drinking, and you're being aware of it and actually enjoying it more. And of course, if you reduce the amount you drink, then you can drink the better stuff, can't you?
Yes, right.
So we try and encourage people to basically be connoisseurs. And then, of course, if you have sneaked into the sort of more severe end of things, then we have coaching tools which can help you reset or get back down to where you want to be, or consider sobriety, because maybe it is the right thing for you. We don't tell people what to do. We like to offer them the information and help them find a path to where they want to be.
In the beginning, we talked about you watching a lot of TV, and my husband is retired as well as I am, although different kind of retirements. But he is a Netflix binger, if you will. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about, how some of these streaming shows portray alcohol.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I mean, I pick on Netflix quite a lot because I indeed do watch quite a lot of Netflix, and therefore whilst I'm watching it I notice things that happen in it, and then I get carried away and do studies on it. But it is, in general, it's across a lot of the media. I mean, one of the main culprits is James Bond, for example. Everybody knows what James Bond drinks. You don't even have to mention it. And I think because it's such a kind of cultural institution, because a lot of us have been watching it like our whole lives. I grew up with James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
There's something very deep in my head that says, martinis are very sophisticated. And if you want to, find attractive women in casinos, then you need a white tuxedo, a Walther PPK, and a martini, don't you? That's like, that gets internalized. That stuff gets into your brain. And, we've just done a lot more stuff on Netflix. So, for example, we took 37 Netflix shows, and we did an interval coding study into each of those shows, and 86.5% of them included alcohol. The average time that alcohol was first shown in the show was just a shade under 10 minutes, which, if you actually do any research into product placement, you will find 10 minutes is pretty much the magic point for product placement. If you leave it too late, people get too engrossed in the program and they don't really notice it. If you go too early, again, they're just kind of trying to get their bearings, so they don't notice it. 10 minutes is absolutely the sweet spot, and that is statistically where alcohol use is on the average Netflix show. Also been doing quite a lot of work around a few things. So they did a great series called Painkiller, which was about the OxyContin
Yeah, it
problem.
was a good one.
And yeah, I mean, it was really good. I really, really enjoyed it because they absolutely stuck the boot into the Sacklers. The Sacklers must have absolutely hated it. And for starting Purdue Pharma and inventing oxycodone and all of that kind of stuff, I think they absolutely deserve it. But in essence, that is a show about the opioid crisis. And then if you look at something like Griselda, that is in essence a show about cocaine. And The Gentleman, which is a British thing that's been on Netflix recently, that is a show which is ostensibly about marijuana. And if you actually look at the amount of drug use in those shows, it's minuscule in comparison to the amount of alcohol that is portrayed in those shows. So Griselda, it's a show about cocaine with very little cocaine in it, with an awful lot of alcohol in it, and almost continuous smoking. So I think the way alcohol is portrayed to us is massively important. And I don't just think that because it occurred to me that's basically what the research says. There's an awful lot of alcohol policy research that talks about how alcohol is portrayed in the media and how important it is for us to understand that. Because if you see it for what it is, it doesn't have the same effect on you.
Yeah. Yeah, we could have a whole show on just that topic right there. But time is of the essence, so we'll move on. And so what can we do to really change the mindset of the general public on this?
So, I mean, if I was a politician, the things that I would be looking at doing would be changing the pricing of alcohol. Alcohol is quite cheap. Occasionally people argue with me on that, but in general, the way alcohol is taxed is makes it cheaper over time. So they tend to tax it at a flat rate rather than as a percentage. So it actually gets cheaper over time, which means in the UK, alcohol is currently 87% cheaper in terms of cost of living and everything than it was 30 years ago. It's also far more available. When I was, at my worst, you couldn't phone somebody up on a moped to come and deliver you wine in the middle of the night. But now you don't even have to phone them. You can just press a button on an app. So availability and cost are real problems. And absolutely, the cost of alcohol and the availability of alcohol dictates the amount that is drunk. In terms of what we're trying to do is just to kind of help people to understand, the problem a little bit more, get the awareness out there, begin the conversations. And like I said right at the start, it's one of the things that really I'm very optimistic about, because people are more interested in having conversations about mental health now than they ever have been.
Yeah.
They're more interested in having conversations about well-being and resilience than they ever have been. And all we need to do is push it that little bit further and help them to start having conversations about drinking, and to actually talk about it in a way that people understand the harm it does, rather than just, oh, ho, 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 it's wine o'clock, you deserve a gin and tonic, all of that kind of stuff. So actually get people to see the misery that people like your sister-in-law have to go through.
Yeah. Well, it has been wonderful chatting today, and I'm sure that we should have a follow-on about this a little bit more, lots more to talk about. But before I share my slide, on your website, you talk about Morris dancing. What is that?
So Morris dancing is a form of English folk dancing. It's if you've ever seen them, it does happen in the US as well. Dressed all in white, lots of ribbons, usually a hat with some flowers around it, bells, waving hankies, dancing to folk music. And it is a lot of fun. I know many of the listeners might be shaking their heads at the moment, but it is genuinely. I love doing it. And it's also kind of connected with drinking. So when I started dancing, I found it a very useful excuse to start drinking quite early in the morning. And when I say quite early in the morning, I was actually out dancing yesterday at an event in Oxford, which starts at 6:15 in the morning, and people were already drinking at 6:15 in the morning. So when I say start early, these people are serious about it.
Serious.
And then when I stopped drinking, I was a bit like, well, it's all about drinking. Why would I go dancing? But I went a few times, and I realized that actually it wasn't about the alcohol. It was about the dancing. It was about the people. It was about the insane traditions. It was about the community. It was about so much more than simply drinking. And that's why I absolutely love it. And one of these days, I'm going to start an entirely sober Morris dance side called Temperance Morris.
Well, if you think about it, it's less possibility of falling over and hurting yourself. Yes, we as we age, we need to worry about falling for sure.
Yeah, well, I am always the fittest, hardest dancing guy in the side. So
there you go.
yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to share my slide now, so you know the drill. Those of you that are just listening, quick, go run, get a paper or pencil so that you can take down the website information for Duncan. And if you're watching, go ahead and get a screenshot in just a moment. So here we go. The website is bhaskaranbrown.com. That's BHASKARANBROWN.com, bhaskaranbrown.com. On Facebook, you can go to duncan.brown.5648. LinkedIn is Duncan Bhaskaran Brown. Instagram is Sober Warrior Coach. And I'm going to turn it over to Duncan to talk to you about what you'll find when you go to that website, as well as how you can get a free copy of his book, Get Over Indulgence. Duncan, it's all yours.
Yeah, so getting to my website is very, very easy if you can spell Bhaskaran Brown, but it's not, that most people can't. So if you just put getover.uk into the internet, that will take you to a little bit of my website. And from there, as a gift to your listeners, they can download a free copy of my book. It's PDF, Kindle. And if you can stand to listen to me for 3 hours and 45 minutes, you can get the audio version as well. So that's just getover.uk. And then, that is a page on our website. So from there, you can find all of the stuff that we do. We've got a little kind of diagnostic test where you can check out your own drinking. We got a lot of content on there as well, blog posts, podcasts, that sort of thing. And if you're really interested in the business stuff, most of my business stuff unsurprisingly goes on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to find me. Connect with me. I'm always happy to chat with people. I genuinely want to help. So if I'm able to help you, please just send me a message and I'll do my best.
Awesome. Well, Duncan, it has been a wonderful chat with you today. Lots of good information. And again, as I said at the beginning, I just think that it's important that we continue to do awareness of it. Unlike smoking where it's definitely can kill you, drinking, we sometimes think, well, it's just a drink, but it really can change your life, and not in a good way if you overindulge. And so those of you that are not overindulging, great, continue to have your glass of wine or beer. But if you think that maybe you might be overindulging, then please check out Duncan's website and take the test. As always, Duncan, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling, signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.